All right. 8 o'clock. Call the meeting to order of the organizational meeting for the Board of Directors.
Can we do the Columbia Council?
That was number 3. I thought that was number, according to my packet, it's like number 3.
But don't we?
Because we need to elect the chair and the vice chair of the board, and then when we go to the Columbia Council, we elect the chair and the vice chair. We just...
But we're only members of the Columbia Council right now.
No. Oh, no. We're members of CA, and also we just got appointed to the Board of Directors, right? We just passed the resolution.
Mm-hmm. You are now members of the Board of Directors of the Columbia Association.
Can you feel it?
That's what that vote just was.
You have been elevated, Alan, to...
So confusing.
We should get ribbons or
By
something.
our election, we're elected to the Columbia Council.
No.
Then the Columbia Council chooses the members, and the members choose the board.
Columbia Council representatives are automatically the members of the Columbia Association. They then elect the directors.
Thank you.
Okay. We are at the organizational meeting for Board of Directors. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Nancy moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Lynn seconded. Any discussion?
Nobody
Well-
seconded it.
Would like to amend the agenda to add a discussion of the proposed Royal Farms SDP.
Second.
Give me a minute. Can we do that like at between 8 and 9? Between number and no on the agenda not between 8 and 9.
It's 8 o'clock. 8 and 9.
We'll put it between 8 and 9. Let me ask him: is there any objection to that? No. In that case, we'll just add it. Chow, you
I
have
want to
something?
make an appointment discussion on board policy related to closed meeting minutes release. I sent you guys an email last time.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
Jeff, you just
Sure.
just explain what you want to talk about.
So I propose last time, because we talked about how we look at the approve or not approve the closed meeting minutes, right? And then we look at the minutes more than 1 year old. So I think a lot of board members even couldn't remember what happened in that closed meeting. Instead, how to approve or not approve the closed meeting minute release. We look at every time when we finish the meeting, we have 10 board members look at whether we should release or not, and which kind of content we should release. We need to make a decision after the meeting instead of waiting for 1 year to look at that and say release or not. So I want to propose that for the amendment of the policy.
It's after 8 and before we adjourn.
Jenny.
I think you have a valid point. Would it be possible to get the minutes within, and you figured this out, 2 weeks or at the most 30 days, but no more than that? Or
Yes, something like that.
how long does it take to write those minutes? They're not complicated usually, although they need legal review, I assume.
They get legal review.
All right, so within 30 days, I don't know, is that too much? Is that too
Can I
long?
just suggest we're discussing the
Yeah,
issue
you're
now rather
discussing,
than
right.
discussing whether to put it on the agenda.
Sorry. Good point.
And I guess my purpose of my second was to put the topic on the agenda.
Sorry, you're
For me, it's
absolutely
not
right.
about
You're right.
supporting that particular
You're right.
idea,
You're right.
or not.
You're right.
But my only thought is this is probably a good topic for the board get-together discussion to at least talk about ways we might change things around or head, and then we can have a discussion of a bunch of things.
The problem is we probably will have closed meeting very soon. And I think it's good to set a standard there, and then we'll follow that. If we say we couldn't make any changes to how we release closed meetings, that's fine. But if we can do that, we should do it as soon as possible because closed meetings will come very soon.
Alan?
I'd like to propose that we put it on the agenda for the purpose, I'd be happy, frankly, to have it in that discussion. But I'd like to have us vote that that's what we're going to do and have that be an actual decision of the board, that we're going to have that decision. So I don't think this has to be a long discussion of the pros and cons of a particular proposal, but just that we make sure that we nail it down that we're going to have that discussion. So I'd be happy to have a very quick discussion when it comes up on the agenda, should it be added.
Okay. So Chow moved and Alan seconded to add a discussion on closed meeting minutes handling.
Release. Oh,
That
yeah.
what we're talking about. Does anybody object? Just. All right, then if it's just consensus, we'll add it. All right, so we made 2 changes. So any other? Is there a motion then to approve the amended agenda? Is to call the vote on the amended agenda. All those in favor with those 2 unanimous. Okay, residents speak out. Well, we did have residents speak out. Anything new? Okay.
Want to come up for another 3 minutes?
Okay. Election of chair and vice chair of the Columbia Association Board of Directors. Greg has put his name in. I put my name in. Greg, anything you want to say?
Well, I don't want to belabor this. I explained in my email to the board why I'd like to be considered for chair. The first topic, as I said, was the board-staff relationship, particular focus on staff responsiveness to board inquiries and to resident inquiries, trying to get a better handle on that so we get a firmer commitment that we're going to get a response from staff. I have some ideas on that. I think it's something we can talk about at hopefully whenever we meet at a mini retreat or wherever we have to talk about the board processes. We can talk about that as well. But that's something that I do plan to stay on top of. Just in my view, a number of things sort of fell through the cracks this year from board members. Secondly, is CA participation in county land use decisions. And I've said there, just again, my general perception is that we've largely been a bystander, and we need to do a better job of forming a position and then advocating for it, and forming a position with some specificity that staff then knows what it's to do. As I said, I think the rule should be, the presumption should be that we are going to take a position on land use, okay? Unless we affirmatively make another decision, we're not on a particular proposal. The third thing has to do with the village, the CA and village relationship. This year, it's been strained. And I'm not saying it's, you don't need to point fingers at anybody. I just need to say it's been strained, folks. We're just not, just don't seem to be getting along. And I'll just suggest that it seems like the current actions we're taking, Andy and Milton, you go around to every village board at least once through the year. You're there for a meeting. I think Milton, you're there for a number of the managers' meetings. We obviously have the managers' meetings with staff there, but I think we just need to, sit down with staff and say, okay, and the villages, and say, what can we do to help improve that relationship to build trust? Because right now, the villages, a number of them are very suspect. Anytime we do anything, we could, they're instantly just, doubting our goodwill, which to me is just crazy. We've got to turn that around. And number 4, emphasizing board decision making. In my opinion, there was too much time taken up last year, board time, on presentations and discussions where we didn't decide anything. Right? We heard presentations on whether it was Newtown zoning or whatever. It was the assisted living facility out in Clarksville that's been proposed. Whatever. We got these presentations, and then we did nothing with them. And now, granted, some of them maybe you wouldn't want to do anything with, but then I question, well, why are we hearing this? Why not just send it to us in the mail? We can read it instead of taking up board time for a lot of these things. You know, and Andy, with all due respect, it was a recent thing that proposal you had of a zoning course. On its face, it sounds good. Zoning 101, we're going to meet for 3 or 4 hours and have someone tell us about zoning. Okay, and so we'll, have this knowledge. Well, maybe I'm just getting old, but I have trouble retaining all these things, especially when it's not in the context of a specific proposal, right? Zoning 101, it's great to know, but just because you give me a 3 or 4 hour course doesn't mean I'm going to know enough about it 6 months later when something comes up where it would be useful to know this information. I'd prefer to have that in the context of something where we're going to make a decision. That's just one example. Fourth, this us versus them. I mean, I enjoy working with all of you. I really do. And I don't like this idea, again, as I say, this us versus them, this block mentality that we sometimes fall into. And I really prefer to, just one little thing. It may be, appearances, but just to mix up the seating a little bit and try to get past that. And then, again, talk about a mini retreat where we can, as a board, sit down, talk about what happened last year, what we felt worked, what didn't work. In that context, talk about things like, the work sessions versus meetings, and in particular, how agendas are created. I mean, that's the one place where the chair has some authority that the rest of board members don't have, and some access and some opportunity to influence and craft what this board does. And I think we need to devote a little bit of attention as to how that's happening going forward. So I would tell you also that I tend to be more of a results-driven person. I hope you all know that. I'm not a process person. Process is important, but there was a village board meeting where a village board member said, I'm a process person. I thought, you proud of that? I love bureaucracy. I can't believe. Anyway, that's not me. Obviously, I'll follow the process. You have to have a process. You have to use a process. But I wouldn't, for example, use process as a weapon to stop things from happening. Wouldn't use process just to make things more complicated and delay. I just think once we can, so many things we all or most of us agree on, it shouldn't be held up by a process. I think that's happened sometimes this year as well. Anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Yeah, you've seen me in action the last year or so for chair, so I would just say I think I've been a fairly effective and fair chair. I think I've been very respectful of the board's time, trying to keep us moving together. It isn't always easy. Try to keep us focused. I do have the time to do it. There's a lot of little administrative stuff that gets done behind the scenes, and I do, as Greg said, go out and meet with the villages. Last March, I just met with the village managers. And I guess I just say that my focus this year is basically what the board said they wanted to do back in March and April, and the forecast, most of it is land development, land use, membership, and the millennials. So that's what I will focus on this year. That's pretty much about it. Janet has ballots.
Are we going to do any questions or just the statements and that's it?
Sure.
You're the chair.
Yeah, sure. Al?
Well, I have questions for both of you, but since you went first, I'll start with the questions for you first. Could you speak a little bit to the time commitment in two ways? You're a working stiff, not a layabout like some of us. And
But he works for the government.
there has been not that this is part of the
We don't get paid for what we do.
not that there has to be this, but the practice for the last few years has been that the president and the board chair and the board vice chair meet during the workday, I think every other week. And it's also been true over time, and I'm not faulting you for this, but that the exigencies of your job have had you come late to meetings. So could you speak to both of those in terms of how you would handle it?
It's a very fair and accurate observation. I intend to do much better as far as getting where I have to be to these meetings on time. I do intend to continue the biweekly meetings with Milton and whoever the vice chair is. I think those are important. I will say I'd like to be able to provide the board some feedback on those as well. So it's a fair point. It's something I acknowledge I need to get better at, and hopefully I will.
So is this something that is in your control? And I don't want to put you in the position of saying I've been deliberately late to meetings, but do you have the ability with your job to carve out that kind of time to set the kind of limit? I got to leave. Traffic looks like it's going to be difficult today.
Yeah,
I got to leave.
Right. I think I'm just going to have to build in more time. I'm going to build in more time for my commute. I mean, I take the MARC train. I take Metro, and I take the MARC train, then I drive. There are potential jams, but I mean, I'm not going to make excuses. I mean, I'm just going to have to do whatever it takes to get here. That's the way I see it.
How has, you talk about this us versus them, how has that shown up for you in how we've handled ourselves as a board, and how would you as chair, besides the mixing people up?
No, I really can't do anything about it, right? I can't tell you who you talk to and when. So I'm not going to do that. It's just there's this perception, right, that on that side of the table, and I don't think there's really a lot of truth to it. But again, there's just perception that there's a block, and it's, to me, it's maybe it's a misperception. I don't know. I don't think it is, and it may continue. I don't know. But the first step, I think, is in trying to solve that perception is to say, you know what, we're going to sit, we're going to pick seats at random. Okay, you're going to get along with whoever you sit next to, whether it's Lynn. I mean, you're okay for the most part, or whoever it is.
We fight occasionally, yes.
But that's my point. I mean, I'm not going to tell people not to talk to each other or anything else. No one's going to do that. But to me, it just sort of bothers me. It harkens back. There was a time just before I got on this board where a group of people called themselves the Block. Okay, they did. They were proud of it. And it really caused some problems. And I just don't want to get into that. It's corrosive to have a group, or the feeling that there's a group off doing its own thing. That's not the way I work.
And could you give an example or two of how you feel process has been used as a weapon or to the detriment of the board's function?
Sure. I can't remember the exact things, but where something critical comes up and the board wants to act, and all of a sudden, well, you realize it hasn't had 2 meetings, or whatever is thrown out. Okay, that's a reason not to do something. I think I look for reasons to do something. It came up with the gun group proclamation, right? I mean, the response, with all due respect to Andy, was, well, we got to have that. We'll see that next meeting. There's no reason for that. There was a solution to that. We eventually got there, but to me, it would be okay to do that. To go right to the solution, to sort of realize that's what the board wanted. That was a sense of the board that it wanted to go ahead and pass that proclamation. Just again, we were going back and forth before the meeting, and I said I was going to make a motion to add this Snowden River, add the Royal Farms development to the agenda. One of the messages back was, well, that requires 2/3 of the vote. I mean, come on. I'm just not even if I don't agree with something, I'll tell you this, I'm not just going to throw a roadblock out there. If a board member, unless it gets out of hand, they're unreasonable. If a board member wants to get something on the agenda and it can be accommodated, why not?
Okay, thank you.
Alice, don't mess that.
I would love to hear you, Andy, respond to the specific points in Greg's email. However you would like to respond to.
I would say that I kind of already mentioned that focus for me this year are basically the 4 things that we have talked about as a board. which is land development, which I'm very, very interested in. And unfortunately, that is going to require, it's not like an immediate situation type thing. It's not like Royal Farms coming. It's more of a, we need to somehow figure out how you carry Rouse's vision into actual language incorporated within the zoning regulations, and we have to propose something that we can support and that will meet our needs. It's just that type of thing is going to take a while, and it does require some type of common background so you kind of know why certain things have to be done to make sure that they're in the language. Land development, I mean, you know that I follow all the land development stuff in Columbia. I will continue. Membership, the board has basically said they want to consider it this year. We're going to do it.
Andy, my question was to respond to,
Great.
so the first one was about board-staff relationship.
Okay, so I actually met with the village managers because I wanted to get their viewpoint.
Board-staff relationships.
And then we talked about how to improve the relationship between the villages as well as the staff. Board-staff relationships, I think that really we need to discuss at one of our meetings to try to get a handle on
Do you agree that there's an issue?
Oh, yeah, well, because I've heard from the board members.
Okay.
There has to be an issue.
Okay.
Board decision-making. I mean, I assume that some of our informational sessions perhaps maybe weren't that useful, but some of them were basically to try to bring the board up to speed so that, I mean, if you think, some of our informational sessions were like, well, here's the open space, and so you got a sense of what they do, but you also got a sense of the people, and the same thing with sports and fitness, and it gave the board, I think, an opportunity to also kind of dive into a little bit more. And so, I mean, I think that there was not going to be any board action out of that. I mean, it was more for the board's information, to give the board an ability to get information. I hate to say it, sometimes not all board members read everything, and some board members prefer a more visual and an ability to ask. And so I don't think I can rely on simply, we'll just send out the information and everybody will read it. Us versus them. I know where Greg is coming from because I knew the board years and years ago. Okay. I mean, I kind of look at us, and we've actually got along fairly well. So I will say there isn't us versus them in a sense that issue by issue. I mean, and I'll say the votes kind of go around. Sometimes, it might be these four people, and other time it might be another. So, yeah, there always is kind of like an us versus them, but I think it's kind of more of an issue type activity. I mean, I know that there are one or two very strong issues that people have disagreements on. But I'd like to think that at least this year, I did allow people to talk and bring out those disagreements. Even though I may not have always, agreed with them, but as a chair, I do think that that's. I guess the other thing is, in processes, Cindy taught me, I gotta admit, Cindy Coyle, about, one of the responsibilities of the chair is to follow the board processes. Okay, we can change the processes, that's fine. But once we kind of have them, the chair's kind of got to put the process and make sure we follow them. Boards can change them. We've changed them before. So the board finds a problem, we change the process, but then the chair's got to implement that new process. And I just think it's part, because if it isn't the chair, who's going to do it?
Thank you.
Jenny?
Just 3 points that I just want to address. One is I had read this in the email, the us versus them. I frankly was a little bit offended by that, and I think the reason is I think if we took the time, and I hope we don't, is to look at the record, I think we probably have voted unanimously 95% of the time. All right, 90%. It's a huge percentage where we voted unanimously. Then there's another percentage where it was maybe 8 or 9 out of 10. So I think that's been really pretty high, 90% and above. I'm willing to bet on that if somebody wants to bet me. Hey, I'm willing. I'll put my money up on that one. So there was only a few issues. In fact, I can only think of one really where it was close, tied. The rest, it was maybe a little bit close. I mean, you guys didn't support me on the overpass. I understand that, I lost. But it was 9-1. So, and another issue where it's 9-1 and I lost. But the only issue was the one thing, and I won't talk about it, where it was very close, 5-5, okay? That was the only issue I can think of where it was a problem. So I don't see this. I think a lot of us make a big effort to try and talk to other board members, and I don't think changing seats, this isn't, chairs where you go around and grab a chair that's available. I don't see that as dealing with the issue. I really think a lot of us make an effort to talk to each other, and I'm impressed with that, quite frankly, compared to what I heard about the CA board before I got on it. I think it's a fabulous board. I'm very impressed with the individual board members and the board as a whole. But then I'm probably prejudiced now that I serve on it, but anyway, and not being objective. But that was a change in what I expected from the CA board, quite frankly. The other issue, just briefly, is the agenda. Yeah, we need somebody to plan the agenda, but I don't feel like I can't do anything about it. Chow just did something about it. On the gun control, I'm the one that moved to suspend the rules to allow us to vote on it. And you all did it. That's what you wanted. We did it. What was the other? What?
The proclamation.
Moms
We
for
did not do gun control.
It wasn't gun control.
Right, we did not do
Excuse me,
gun
excuse
control.
me. Okay. I didn't mean to put it that way. Moms for whatever. But we can't.
Proclamation.
The proclamation. But yeah, thank you. So thank you, Milton, for controlling that. But my point is that I appreciate that the chair, whoever the chair, takes the responsibility of giving us something, and I feel I can have a say in saying I want this on the agenda. I may or may not get it, or I can appeal to the rest of you so that I do get it or I don't get it. That's the way the game's played. That's okay with me. But I don't feel like I have no say in the CA board, even if it's after the agenda is prepared. I don't feel like I can't get it amended. So, and we've had examples of where we've done that. I just wanted to respond to those 2 points where I feel, like I'm not being led to the point where I have no say. The presentations are a different issue, but then again, if I feel we should have a say if we want whoever the chair is to say we want a presentation on X. That's our responsibility. And if we don't do that, then it's somewhat our fault. So, okay.
I mean, I'm not going to, if I could respond, I'm not going to,
Sure.
Belabor or argue with you on the agenda. I will say I have some specifics that I do want to talk to the board about on agenda formation.
Okay.
And the use of the agenda log in particular, I think, could be strengthened. I do understand what you're saying, and I think all of us feels like, but it is very difficult. I think you'll agree that once an agenda has been put out, and it should be somewhat difficult, right? I mean, we have to give the public notice. Hey, here's what we're talking about in our meeting. It can't be that every meeting, Ginny and Greg and Chow come in here and say we want to add 6 things to the agenda, and the public's like, what the hell? We didn't know.
Exactly.
And so therefore, it's really important that the say that you're talking about happens before the agenda is put out a week before, and that's what I'm talking about. That I think some things could happen to improve that process.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one more for you.
Sure.
Last year, I remember I think I raised it at this time. I may have raised it elsewhere during the year. My experience of you, more than I'm comfortable with, is that because you're so knowledgeable, you tend to insert yourself. Somebody will say something, you'll respond to it. Somebody else will say something, you'll respond to it. Nothing you said has ever been wacky, but it's been like the Andy show. And I guess I'm wondering, A, do you acknowledge that? And B, if so, what could you do to stem that tide?
Oh yeah, I will agree, and I was kind of hoping that in the last couple months I've been doing less of that because I have been aware of it, and that's pretty much about all I can say is.
How would you want to be approached if a board member felt that was going on?
Oh, okay. Well, one or two things. One, you can always send me an email. Okay, afterwards, if you'd say, I think you're out of line and doing this and this and this.
After the fact.
Yeah, I mean, if you think. And the other is you can just come up and say something. Yeah, I know I've had board members, I mean, there was like, a set of board members saying that I had a tendency to always focus, let's say, on the left side, and I was missing people on the right, so I've been trying to make sure that I kind of do.
Us versus them.
I thought it was because I was a woman.
For whatever reason, I kind of
Need a swivel chair.
Agree with that.
Actually, what I told
Thought it was the other group. Janet thought it was the other group.
And so neglected.
Or the opposite.
The women.
Then mix up the chairs.
now, if
And though I have extra space.
if you really want that solved, what I would do is say, look, we're going to make a U shape so I can see everybody. Although I got to admit, I mean, when I was chair of like the Owen Brown Village Board, I always sat on an end so that I could see everybody, you know, for that reason. I mean, most chairs will sit in the center, and I understand here, and we got television and everything and guests. But generally, if you ever went to any of my meetings when I was chair at Owen Brown, I would always sit in an end so I could see everybody to make sure that I could.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, too, which there was a criticism which I heard, and I've tried to make sure, is that I hear from everybody, so that I will actually call out people. I'll just pick Lynn. I'll say, Lynn, you know, you haven't had a chance to talk. So I've been making kind of an effort to do that. But. All right, any other questions? All right, Janet. We can thank Janet for preparing the ballots.
Thank you, Janet.
You can thank Janet for a lot.
Get the,
Like the hat.
Here, you want that? Do you need another pen? Need another one?
Ballot is ready. Just hold it up. You can drop it in the bag.
Bag been inspected.
We're already 6 in there.
It's not price.
Any Russians?
Was it Price Waterhouse? Who screwed up the Oscar?
Funk and Wagnall's mayonnaise jar under their fridge.
Oh my God.
That will be
Mayonnaise jar.
Okay, I have everyone's ballot.
How did we agree with Andy's count? In the room last year.
You know, it was a process for you.
Well, it's
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
it's how much money is in
That was my shoe. So we had to
Can't
put
joke
everybody's
around
name
here.
so that we could.
Then I'm out.
Oh, no,
especially at the beginning. It is true, especially at the beginning.
I agree. He was a little.
I thought he usually waited and fired. And Ellen brought it up. And he's been great. Really? What are we
Vote again.
But he says how much more was still.
Right, at the beginning, I didn't tendency to say, and I got to admit, I wanted to jump in. I used to live where we just saw the flame.
Oh, POC, sorry.
Big places for sale.
Well, Remedial meeting will be
Sidewalk?
It's just when it's rolled to the next week.
Yeah.
That's
Pathways.
a good idea.
sort of like the board.
That age too. That's it.
Okay, congratulations, Andy, board chair.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Our condolences.
Last year that we get numbers, what
Numbers?
the vote was,
Is that what the board wants?
what we talked about last year.
No,
I
this is what we created last year, so that everybody's name was on it.
get that, I'm saying numbers.
He wants to know what the vote
This
was.
person got this many
The
votes,
number of votes
this person
were.
got that many votes.
Oh, I don't know.
As I said, the
Thought we
board
talked
tell me,
about that.
what do you want?
I think we need the numbers, right? We talk about that.
I don't think we need a number. We have a winner. It doesn't matter how many he won by. Yeah, I think it's inappropriate to give him myself.
Okay.
Nancy, could you say why this election is different than other elections for you?
This election, it's personal. I mean, it's us. And I think it would be inappropriate for us to say, well, 3 people liked Greg and 7 people liked Andy. I mean, and then again, it could have been 6 and 4 or who knows. I just don't think that the number matters. We have a winner and that's what matters.
All right, let's move on to vice chair. Dick has expressed an interest in being vice chair. Is there anyone else? Since there's no one else interested, I don't see any reason to hold a ballot.
Like an acclamation?
I move for Andy's election as vice chair. I'm just seeing if you're paying attention.
No.
Dick's
Dick-
election as vice chair. Seeing if you're all awake, that's all.
All right, Dick, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I was ready to give a speech, too.
I do have a number of questions.
3
for you.
minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say,
3
someone
minutes.
grill.
No, we're going to move
That's
on.
what we're trying to avoid.
All right, committees. I know you're going to all love and going to jump right up and volunteer for committees. So we have the Audit Committee and the Risk Management Committee. We would very much like 3 board members to serve on those committees. Does anyone have an interest in the Audit Committee?
If I may.
Sure.
And one of the things that we want to emphasize, and I promised Jackie I would, is that keep in mind with the Audit Committee, that's one of the committees where we will like for the person along with the 2 community residents to have some financial not background, but knowledge or interest. Not be a concern that, yes, what you're going to have in front of them are quarterly financial statements, a report from the auditors. Just have a comfort level with it. There's no warm and fuzzies on the Audit Committee.
Exactly right. The problem. I've done it for 3 years. I'm done.
Let me say that it's a very interesting, these are interesting meetings.
They are. They're fun to go to.
And I mean, they're fascinating because you really get to see a lot of the machinery.
Yeah, you can attend even if you don't sit on it.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yeah,
But for the Audit Committee, I mean, we really do need 3 members, and the reason is if you look at the charter, the committee has to have a majority of board members, and if we have 2 resident members who have been very, very good, we need 3 board members.
I'll volunteer because I go to the meetings anyway, so.
Anyone else?
All right, I'll do it again.
Great, good.
Greg, Jackie would appreciate that. She likes continuity also.
She might like continuity, but I don't know if she'll appreciate that I'm the continuity.
I'm trying to be nice.
That's right. It was good.
All right, let's just try to go down, and then we'll come back and try to fill things. Risk management. Does anyone have an interest? Nancy wants to be on risk management. And Lynn.
How many do you need for that?
Just 3.
It's a good committee. I like that one. I missed that.
All right, well, I got at least 2. I guess I'll have to. All right, let's look at the advisory committees. So let me first just ask board members for their preference. I'm going to go around. Janet, what would you like to
I
serve?
prefer to stay on the art center.
Art. Alan, what would you like?
Um,
What's your preference?
Either aquatics or the teen and middle school. Preference for aquatics.
Chow, what would you like?
Maybe international and multicultural advisory committee.
Jenny, what would you like?
Climate and or aquatics. But if you want aquatics.
Lynn, what would you like?
Oh, probably either. I like the health and fitness. Unfortunately, our schedules are always with our village board meeting. That's been a problem. Golf committee, if Greg doesn't want it, whatever.
What's your first choice, though? Your first choice?
Health and fitness.
Greg?
Yeah, I'm okay staying on the golf and green.
You achieved a victory with the menu at the. Seriously.
You deserve a beverage.
No.
Beverage card, yeah.
Shari?
I'm happy to stay with Watershed.
Nancy?
Tennis.
Dick?
I don't want to be on the senior advisory committee again.
Too old for that one?
I'm not old enough. I will take any other committee.
Dick, do you have any interest in golf? Because we could switch. I would do senior advisor if you wanted to do golf.
Well, I don't play golf and don't know.
Do you want to do health and
play
fitness?
tennis.
I'll do golf. If you want to do
Little
senior
take golf.
advisory, we could do that.
Did you hear? She just said you could do health and fitness,
I'll take health and fitness.
and you take golf, and I'll take senior.
Okay.
Whoa.
Whoa.
For you. That was cool.
That was cool. That worked.
We're taking serious.
No questions.
All right. I mean, I would like to stay with
It was
IT.
down.
Does that cover all of them?
No.
No.
What's left?
Teen and middle school.
No, Alan
I
has
thought
that.
Alan got aquatics.
Well, you can take
Aquatics
two.
or teen.
Well, somebody's going to have to take 2.
Right, somebody's going to have to take 2. So let me read what I have that it seems. So, Art Center Advisory Committee, Janet. International Multicultural, Chow. Lynn, Golf.
Stop laughing.
Greg, Senior. Shari, Watershed. Nancy, Tennis. Health and Fitness. Andy, IT. So we had aquatics.
Which one is Jimmy taking?
Hello, Andy. I'm
Jenny.
here from over here.
Jenny.
Yes, just a second. Wait a minute. Sorry. I got this.
Climate.
So what we have is Jenny wants climate. Alan,
I'll do teen and middle school. Why not?
and then we have aquatics.
Could
You want aquatics?
Somebody's got to do
Yeah.
2.
Right, somebody do.
Anyone else wants to take 2, I'm happy to step aside on the teen and middle school.
Is IT, is that you, Andy, again?
Yeah.
What does teen middle school advisory committee?
Okay.
I think that's me.
I mean, what do they
How
do?
often does the audit committee meet?
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
I'll volunteer for that, because I want to look at the data.
Thank you.
I'll do risk again.
I'm going to do risk. Good.
Jenny, audit.
So audit, we have Dick, Greg, and Ginny. Risk management is Nancy, Lynn, and Sherry. And we have all the advisory committees. The only thing left is the BOC,
The what? Oh, yeah.
Board Operations Committee, and we just select numbers.
Just follow last year's.
I like the way you did that last year.
Oh,
Could I suggest
sure.
we maybe hold off on that till we have our discussion of how we're going to organize things? Because it may be that we'll decide that that's not the best way to set up agendas quarterly.
All right.
Right. I mean, if it's just a matter of pulling numbers, so maybe we need to figure out who's going to be June 4. That's coming up pretty soon, but we're going to have our retreat before then. So,
Well, I'll tell you what, can I have 2 volunteers who would like to perhaps do the June 4th, just in case we have it?
Watershed, I'm sorry.
we'll certainly have it.
Janet, Alan? All right.
Andy, you're right. Why did we start doing it this way? Because we've only been doing this a couple of years.
1 year.
First year, second year.
The numbers?
Because we got rid of the committees.
Yeah. And we did what we said was we had 8 members. We had four BOC meetings. We just did 2 members on each.
International.
Well, but we had at least a year, maybe 2, where we had already gotten rid of the committees. But we just had it was still monthly BOCs.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you asked the board, you need 3, how many volunteers for each?
The 2, just 2 for each.
I mean, if you just want to ask if there are 2 board members who are willing to do it or have a desire to do it for the whole year,
I like the way it was done last year. We all get a crack at it.
I'm okay without a crack at it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, you can give up your crack.
I'll tell you what. I mean,
I like Alan's
Alan had a
idea.
good
Let's wait till
suggestion.
we have
Let's talk about it. I at least got the June. If we're going to have a June BOC meeting, at least I got that covered.
I agree.
So we can go. All right. I think that. Well, just a second. I think that handles all the committees. So we're going on the section of the CA reps to the Inner Arbor Trust Board of Directors.
Do we nominate people?
So let me put it this way. Who is interested? Who among the board is interested in being on the Inner Arbor? Lynn and Janet. We need 2 reps.
Well, the one thing,
Great.
Janet voiced her interest before tonight's meeting, and I had a chance to talk to her, and I have no problem with this, with getting off of the Inner Arbor Board. The only caveat, and I've already talked to her about this, and I think you're fine with this, is that I'd be allowed to stay on the Inner Arbor Board through the summer season. And the reason being is that we just got our liquor license approved, and I'm one of the applicants on the liquor license. And so when I get off the board, the trust is going to have to go back to the county, back to the liquor board, and substitute my name out. And we don't want to have to go back to the liquor board this soon after we got our.
Literally just got it Tuesday night, not next week.
So that's the only caveat, and Janet's fine with that caveat.
All right. So if that's reasonable to the board, from what I'm hearing is we'll have Greg and Lynn stay on until September, October. I mean September
through September.
Through September, and then Janet will go over.
Do you think it would be possible for me to sit in on them?
That's what I was just going to ask for.
Is that a problem?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not a
I just,
problem.
to get up to speed is what I was thinking.
Yeah, you need to get up to speed anyway.
Alan had a question.
I mean, there's another potential solution, and that would be for the Inner Arbor Corporation to amend its bylaws to increase their board to 8, and just have Greg stay on however long that is.
Yeah. brought it up. There's a concern, this has to do with the 501c3 status, that if CA is perceived to exercise too much control over the Inner Harbor, that could risk that status. But I thought that it's a good thought. It's just,
we wouldn't have a majority.
that would be,
It'd be 4-4.
Right.
it's just a perception thing. We just don't want to, risk it. But no, I thought the same thing.
By the time the IRS got around to thinking about that.
But we just are bad luck that they,
You need to do something.
I think it's very important, though, to really know exactly what the dates are with the liquor board and that we file immediately. And because there is a delay there, otherwise we're going to see that we're still talking in November about getting the name changed on the liquor license. So, I mean, seriously, they've got to,
Oh, no, we'd
Inner
like
Harbor
to,
Board
we'd
has to
like
start
to do that
filing-
as soon as
filing
possible. Really.
now for a name change.
well, we're not going to do that.
That what I'm asking about that is I don't know who this person would be on the license, and if it has to be somebody that's actually on the board, then Janet would be sitting in but not technically on the board.
It doesn't need to be Janet on the license.
Somebody else.
Ellen Giles has taken
Okay.
the liquor training, so she
So-
would be prepared to go on the license.
Yeah, you have to be
She's
trained.
had the training, great.
Yeah, so she's
Okay.
had the training.
So, okay.
We just wanted to wait an amount of time to get away from all of the kerfuffle that was
Yeah, I understand
created
that.
around the board.
But then when does the board really see itself filing for the change?
No offense. The Inner Harbor will take care of that.
Yeah, we'll do
We're
it
gonna-
as soon as we can, but I think we have to just make sure we have it in hand, see how things are operating. But the intent is to file it as soon as
We're not
we
going to
can.
risk our liquor license. Let me tell you, that's
Oh.
a big deal, and we will do. I mean, the Inner Harbor.
I know that. I understand all that. I just know there's always a timeline there, and it could be several months before the case is actually heard.
This isn't the council part of liquor board. This
I know,
is just
I know.
Right. So, it should be an easy process. It happens all the time. The hearings were very short.
So in July, you should have a change, you think?
July with.
August?
July's probably when you want to file.
August? Okay. By September, okay.
Yeah, because remember what we're saying is the rep is Greg until the end of September, in which case it becomes Janet.
Yeah, I mean, Janet's going to be on the board either way, right? They have to
Allow her to
trust-
sit, okay.
Right.
So Inner Harbor's got to figure that out. They know the
But
dates.
she doesn't have a vote until she actually is sick.
Right.
That's important, okay.
All right. Anything else? We got that one solved. All right. We have to reappoint the officers of CA. The list is Milton as president, Susan as vice president, Sherry as secretary, Lynn as treasurer, and Don Van Dusen as assistant secretary, and that's for the liquor.
I move that we do that.
So Dick moved and Nancy seconded to reappoint the officers.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
Which kind of position counted for the officials?
I'm sorry, what?
Which kind of position accounted for the officials? Like right now we have 5, right? So, like other people like vice president for open space, they're not counting the.
No. Corporate law says you have to have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
For other reasons, we have Susan so that she can step in case Milton's not here.
Mm-hmm.
And then Don is, I think.
But Susan is not here.
Yes,
She is.
Oh, yeah, Susan correct.
So
Sherry is not secretary, right? She's the legal counsel.
but for the
purpose-
officers
for
of the
purposes
corporation,
officers
she
of the
is the
corporation, I'm
secretary.
the secretary. And I do fulfill certain secretary functions with respect to signing documents and being the witness and things like that.
Picking up dry cleaning.
And I think
And serving coffee.
And I think technically you have to hold the documents. You have
Pardon
to technically you have to hold the documents.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the secretary does.
I see.
All right. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the reappointment of the officers? Unanimous. Thank you. All right. I want to thank Janet, who put together the schedule of what our meetings look like as of right this moment. So
There's 20 of them.
there's 20 meetings. Please put them on your calendar.
It's easy to remember.
We have to vote on this? Or?
No. So we did that with the policy when we created the policy. We said these are our meeting dates. All right. Next, Royal Farms. So I'd like Jane to just say a few words first because there's been some updates.
Yes, I'll start here at where we are today, and then I'd like to go back to the other case that you also saw. So today we learned that the petitioner has decided not pulled its case from the docket from the planning board. So they have withdrawn temporarily. I mean, they don't want to have that date, or we don't know what the reason is. So they're not going to be on the planning board in June, as far as we know.
Any jeopardy, if you will, to them for coming?
No.
Do they have to get to the back of a line now, or could
No,
they come
I
in
don't know
anytime?
I mean, there must be some time limit, but I don't know what it is. And no, I think when they would decide they wanted to, they would be fit in,
Is there a possibility that they don't want to go in front of the planning board at all? And that they think they can get around the planning board?
I don't think that's possible because it's clear that the regulations say they must. I've been thinking about a lot of reasons, but I don't really know what the reason is, so I don't want to speak. So they're represented well by counsel, somebody who knows the system very well, so I really don't know.
Well, why not speculate, Jane? I mean, come on. Really,
So-
you've got a lot of knowledge in this. I mean, you've got a lot of experience. So.
One thing is there are two kinds of meetings before the planning board. One's a planning meeting and one's a hearing. And the hearing is a quasi-judicial, and that's the one they're going to have. So I can't imagine that because they're represented so well by somebody who's so knowledgeable, Mr. Sang-ho, that they wouldn't have known they had a planning hearing and not a meeting. But maybe that's something that they were not wanting to do. But otherwise, I cannot think of any other reason.
You've got no rumblings that maybe they're going to abandon the project?
No, I mean, I wanted to give you go back a little history, but they've been at this for a number of years. And, the old case, who was not here on the board when the case we had our decision here in 2015? Okay, so is it worth just spending a little time on that other case? Because it's the same case, except it's, it was filed in 2013. It took a year for it to get through the DPZ review process, and then it came to our attention, and it was exactly the same proposal, except it had access onto Snowden River Parkway, which requires the planning board's approval. And this board was really against that, as others in the community were. And so you all told Milton to go testify against this case. We had counsel, and Milton testified many pages of testimony about protecting Snowden River Parkway and not having this access to it, the whole Parkway system. And as an aside, I say that because it got fewer pages, he also spoke against the gas station as maybe not being a permitted use. And I think also the mini-mart, saying that really wasn't permitted use. But the main focus of the board had been Snowden River Parkway. So that case
Can I interject there? Because it seems to me at the time the reason our main objection was because you felt like that was our strongest case. But I think we felt equally strongly that that gas station should not exist
Right.
there and the mini mart should
Right.
not exist there.
So that's reflected in Lynn's testimony. That, it was, much, very strong on that. Okay, so that case then was appealed by the petitioner to the hearing examiner. And the hearing examiner, when you have a case, it gets on the schedule. But the applicant at that time said, no, we don't want it to be active right now. So they put it on inactive. And as soon as you do that, you get a notice that says, automatically after 180 days, this case is going to be dismissed unless you act. It's clear. So after about 190 days, they got a letter saying your case is done, dismissed. And so, of course, the applicant then appealed to the board, our county board of appeals. I think, as you know, some of you know, when you go to the Board of Appeals here, the case is heard fresh. So they don't refer to what the planning board said. It's called de novo. It's all new. And I believe that the attorney thought that he could go to the Board of Appeals and have the case heard again and do that rather than when he's going to the Board of Appeals to appeal the dismissal of an administrative rule. So we had our counsel. This was just not that long ago. We had our counsel, and he talked to the government's lawyers ahead of time and made sure that the case was going to be heard on dismissal. And it was pretty much heard on that and a few other side issues, and it was dismissed uniformly. So now they can go, I guess, to the circuit court. That's the next way. So that's still a pending case. It could go forward. So I just want to give you the history on that. Then come the case before you. It's dated, if you see, SCP 17-41. 17 means in 2017. That came to the county in about this time last year. It was on the tracker and so forth. We were looking at the case at that time. It was going through the internal review process, comments back and forth, and then they got to a point where they said, you gave us 45 days to fix whatever's wrong with our application. We need more time. So it is extended, and finally it's come back this winter, came back, and it met all the statutes. Well, that's the planning board, planning department said, your application is complete, essentially. When somebody said it was approved, it wasn't approved. It was just approved to kind of go on to the planning board.
That's not the same as the staff's technical
That's
report.
right. Now they're writing the technical staff report, and that comes out either 1 or 2 weeks before the planning board hearing or meeting. They're trying to do 2 weeks. But, of course, as of today, they've stopped doing that because the applicant doesn't have a planning board date. So this application is very much the same. It still has the gas stations. It has a mini convenience and restaurant. I'm doing this because it's on a floor plan like this in a building. But they say one's a restaurant and one's a mini mart. Have joint cashiers. And then there's a big car wash. It's really laid out the same as it was 3 years ago.
So they really have, in a sense, two active, they could end up potentially having both of them approved?
They're asking for a gas station with pumps, a restaurant mini mart in one building, and car wash.
They have the thing going through that's in the courts, and
Yes.
they have this.
Well, they haven't put it through the courts. It's eligible
Well,
to.
the appeals process.
Yeah, they haven't yet appealed, so we don't know.
But they're two separate things for
Two
basically
separate
the same
cases.
thing. The difference being the access to Snowden.
Right. So I don't, this is a new case, and then there was an issue I think with the applicant and why last year we kept asking DPZ, where's this case? What's going on? And if I can at a work session speak, it was because the applicant was saying we should be grandfathered and go under the old gas station regulations, not the new ones. Because evidently during the legislative process, there was some language in there that was going to grandfather them. It didn't evidently get in the mix, but it's kind of like when the history, it's like, well, they told me I was going to, get bumped up to the next grade or whatever. Well, it's not in the regulations, it's not in the law. So I think there was some coming back and forth maybe up to the third floor. Who knows? The third floor means the county executive, to see which regulations. And they decided it was the new regulations. There's no way around it.
So Jane, what you're saying is that the new application.
That's right. The new
has
application
to meet the
new regulations.
Right.
The new fuel
and,
station.
for this, some of it's landscaping. The parcel size is quite large, so it meets those. So I don't know, if they had to squeeze the site, but evidently they were able to make, find a way to meet those regulations.
Sure. And then Nancy.
Yeah, did they beef up the environmental requirements as far as that was one of the things that the group was looking at, and one of the things, part of the discussion was to put new gas stations where old gas stations were, because you can't ever really clean them up so that they're eligible for any other use.
So let me ask the first question. Ginny already asked me to do a kind of side-by-side comparison between the citizens' report and I'd like to do that and answer your question because, no, this is not a gas station site. Again, this is a industrial building that's been there, plus parking lots and so forth. So gas station, is not there. Go ahead.
Nancy?
There was also a question about the sign. The sign was going to be
huge.
20 feet high or something?
I have not reviewed the sign package. I have access to all the application, the back and forth communications. It's freedom, but they've given us technical access because it's all electronic. But I haven't reviewed the sign package.
Ginny?
Is there anything in the new regs about need or distance from another gas station?
I'll have to look.
Because you got the Exxon across the street.
Yeah,
so
I don't believe that did get in there. No.
Ah, okay.
Nancy.
The other thing is, could you get us Milton's testimony or somebody?
Sure.
Thank you.
Nancy?
Is it possible to check? Is it difficult to check the sign business? Because I know we were, at the time, the board was very upset about that as well.
Yeah,
Alan?
certainly.
And then Chow.
You may have just sort of already answered this, but in your non-legal but technically expert opinion, do you think, two questions. The fact that DPZ has said you may go through,
Right.
you said that doesn't constitute approval, but it sounds like you also sort of implied that did mean that DPZ has ruled that they do meet all the technical criteria of the new fuel station.
So, yes, but that's not the same as saying that they approve it.
Okay, that's what I
the
make sure.
use, right?
But they are saying that they, so.
That I believe, yes, that they either met it or they have alternative ways of meeting it. They've worked out some kind of, so I don't know because I haven't evaluated, the application.
My next question, in your opinion, do you think they've met it?
No, I haven't done that evaluation. I kind of think that that's the kind of thing that the county's job to do. And if we have questions about it, then we can, raise them. But I think that's really, I leave that to them. I don't think, I don't feel it's my position to second guess, on a staff of, 40 people over there whose job it is to review applications. But when it comes and they do say, it didn't meet it and we're giving a waiver, then that's when I would, look at it and see if it were appropriate or not.
Chow?
So, Jen, since the process is still going forward for the developers, right? If the board said they want to oppose the development, is this a good time to have a position?
So, yeah, I think it's good to be thinking about it because if it's not June 7th, it's going to maybe be some other time. I think it's good to be starting to think about what are your concerns and looking, to be consistent with what you did last time. You don't have to, but, 7 of you were on the board. So are there new issues that you want to raise, or are you satisfied? Is there some other modification that we'd like to see, or is it just that no, we don't? It's not. You don't want it.
So Jane, I do have. Is it possible to get a copy of the traffic study? I'm sure they had to do a traffic study.
Yeah, I saw, and I very quickly, again, because I got access a couple of days ago, looked and I saw a couple of memos back and forth about their traffic study. So yeah, I absolutely could do that.
The new submittal, I'm not sure how to exactly phrase this, but I've seen the plans the county has for widening Snowden River, putting in the park, the pathways and that.
Yeah.
Does the new plan basically incorporate that so that that can still go ahead? Or is that just a question to look at?
I need to, I maybe need to take some measurements, but yeah, it looks like they've accommodated that. I know that there's a member of the, there was a member of the audience who had some other opinion, but I believe that, they have done that. They have made a lot of traffic improvements. They were required to so the first earlier submittals this last year, they didn't have some turning movements, and then the county told them, fix this application. So I see a Snowden River Parkway when you're heading towards Broken Land. There is a left-hand turn into Minstrel Way, but it's a little short, so they have to lengthen that. And then as you're leaving the gas station on Minstrel Way, right now there's 2 lanes. One is a right turn, and the other one is a left or straight. And now they've put in the 3rd lane. They have to put in the 3rd lane. So one will be straight or left, one will be straight or left, and one will be right. And they also have some other turning movements that they had to make on Minstrel Way.
Sure.
Yeah, the question of setbacks. If the older gas stations have been set back a certain number of feet, is that a county requirement or is that a guideline?
So the regulations for gas stations, if it has a setback requirement, if it does, they would have to meet it. Under this case, also, there's an FDP from 1969, which is what sets down what can be used on this site. And it also has setback requirements. So those have to be met. And I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I know that they do have setback requirements in the FDP. So those would also come into play.
Okay, so I'm just wondering whether that was changed under these new requirements.
Yeah. Or whether it remains the same as the older gas stations.
So again, I'm going to do this comparison. But you mean the old gas station regulations?
Yeah.
Yeah. On the FDP, I do, when you're finished with your questions, I want to remind you of the very difficult language of the FDP and why it's so hard for the staff as well as other people to know if a gas station is permitted here. So I want to read that later.
Alan?
I don't want this question to be taken as more challenging than it's intended to be, but it is intended to be somewhat challenging. I'm not sure if it's to you or to Milton or to who. We did take a position as a board on the previous case that this is virtually identical to. How did it happen that we had to add this to an agenda? The first time we all heard about it was like in the last week. Rather than having you all come to us and say, hey, this new petitioner, you opposed this before, the petitioner is coming through again with a slightly modified thing. Are you where which I assume came across your desk some time ago?
Yeah.
So Alan, could I answer that? In a sense, because when we found out about it is tentatively set for the May 24th meeting. I mean, it was going to be on the meeting.
The BOC approved that?
No, the first meeting gets set by the chair and the vice chair and Milton. It's the very first meeting we have in May, because there is no BOC. The BOC doesn't meet until June.
So, there was no chair or vice chair either.
Right, but tentatively, I suggested to Milton that this be a topic on that agenda. Now, we may still keep it on the agenda, okay? But I wanted to say it wasn't like, when we knew about it, we said, we got to get it on the agenda. It's got to be there. This just happened faster than I had initially thought. But so it wasn't staff. It was kind of, I said, put it on the May 24th agenda.
We've known the case for a year,
and been working with staff, to understand where the case is, It's been held up in it's like a case, and it has been consistently been on the tracker. So if you're looking at that, you wouldn't see it, and we were waiting for the thing to be technically complete, so when the planning board is gonna, and then it would be for me the time to bring it to you. Could have done it a year ago, perhaps, but it wasn't complete,
So Jane, just kind of, you've been involved in a number of these cases. When an applicant kind of has a date set and then pulls back, is that an indication they may change something, may tweak something in their submittal?
I don't know, because they've already gotten, they already passed
Right.
go,
Yeah.
So why would they do that? I don't know, except are they doing something with their appeal case, or I don't know.
Greg?
Yeah, no, just speculating with far less experience with Jane, but just my gut tells me they do not. They want to try to avoid a hearing type meeting in front of the planning board.
But it's clear.
And it's clear to you, Jane, but they're going to argue that it's not clear, right? And that they should just be able to go through this with some other way, with a lot less due process. But whatever, just
it's the regulations. If you read them, it says a public hearing.
I mean, everyone. I don't know. I just say lawyers are very clever about coming up with ways to make clear things cloudy.
Yeah.
Milton.
Let
Milton
wants to just say. To me, and not knowing the standards inside it, but it's not. They have to have the plans have to be reviewed, and it does not fall in the criteria of administrative review. So I don't know where else they're going to have to go. They can go.
Well, my feeling is that we maybe don't have to discuss this tonight. My thought was tonight we could figure out whether the sense of the board is still what it was several years ago, i.e. that we want to oppose the SDP and then provide the staff some direction as far as going forward and coming up with a strategy and arguments to do that. I mean, because these things, do take time. If we're talking about hiring outside counsel again, and there may be additional things to bring in this time that weren't on the table last time. I don't know, but it seems like to me that's why I want to get on the agenda tonight, as opposed to waiting until May 24th, was to give staff that time, if the board chooses to oppose, to give staff that time to get some of this done.
I just want to go back to the FDP. Okay.
Well, just one more question before we get into the FDP. So, World Farms, there was another planning board case. It was Route 1, World Farms, same type of situation. When they went to the design advisory panel, they insisted that the pumps be put behind the building. Right. So that the building fronted Route 1, okay, and then the pumps were behind. Now, I got to admit, I didn't follow that case all the way through the planning board. I don't know if the planning board agreed with that. And if the planning board did, is it possible also to argue in this situation to put the building frontage first in the pumps, since they went through this on Route 1? Just something to think about as we kind of go through this. Okay, on smart. Thanks, Jay. Do you want Dick?
Well, I follow up on what Greg said. Do we want to have a straw vote or a vote or whatever on whether we want to pursue
Before we do that, let's let Jane finish. She wants to talk about one more thing on the FDP.
And this is the reason why a zoning update is needed for Newtown. One of the reasons. So we have this FDP, and in the very fine print, it talks about the permitted uses. So it says all uses permitted in industrial districts or industrial land zones are permitted, but not limited to all uses permitted in M1
and MR districts, except, however, that uses only permitted in M2 and T2 are prohibited. So it's saying M1 is good, but if it's only in M2 or T2, then no. And those are the heavier uses. Commercial uses, ancillary to or compatible with. Commercial uses ancillary to or compatible with permitted industrial uses are permitted, including the following. So how does anybody know what ancillary to or compatible with, right? It's very, especially the compatible, there's no standards. And then it says permitted are restaurants, banks, gas stations, savings and loan, parking lots, supplies and lumber yards. So right there, restaurant and gas station, right? But they have to be seen to be ancillary to or compatible with. So, the restaurant is ancillary to the gas station, and the gas station, and it says that they have to be ancillary to or compatible with permitted industrial uses. So one party on this thinks that means any industrial use. So it's a permitted industrial use in the FDP zone. So if there's a warehouse or something, so is a gas station compatible with that? Yeah, okay, you could say yes. But other people say, when it says that commercial uses that are compatible with permitted industrial uses, they mean industrial uses on that site. And there are no industrial uses on this site. So one group of people read it that way, and one group of people that way. I'm not saying they're good or bad. It's very so our lawyer and you all have taken up that it's not compatible or ancillary to industrial uses because there's no industrial uses on the site.
Great. Great.
A lot of times you have an ambiguity.
So
what you do is you look at the actual practices of the people around it. So you say, okay, how have people understood this over the years? And I mean, would you agree that that over the years we haven't seen anything like this?
Well, across the street we've seen across the street there's the bank and there's the Jimmy John's and all that stuff. Everything's happened in that area.
But that's not on the FDP.
It's another FDP. Yeah, you're right. But it's the same kind of thing that these non-industrial uses have crept into the industrial area.
But that's not an industrial FDP over there.
Yeah, no, it is. It's the same. It's the same FDP.
No, it's not.
No, I think it's a separate one.
Someone?
I think it's a separate one. You'd have to look it up.
Definitely is.
Look it up.
But so I think that you do have to do that, and I think that we have to not use language like this in this is the zoning for the site, and two minds could differ on this easily. So that's and so the government has found that the gas station is a permitted use because of this, right? And the planning staff have said that the mini mart is ancillary to the gas station, so it is permitted. And what we said last time was, you got that wrong. You'll always you see a lot of highs and mini marts that don't have gas stations. So it's not ancillary. It's actually the gas station is ancillary to the mini mart. They had it backwards. So we said in your testimony,
the mini mart's ancillary to the gas station.
Huh?
No, she's saying the opposite. It's the opposite.
No.
It's the opposite. See, that's what the government said. The staff said that the mini mart was okay because it was ancillary to the gas station.
Okay.
But we said no, that's not right because the mini mart is what drives the money, and that comes first, and the gas station is actually ancillary to that. So that's kind of fuzzy logic. This time they're proposing a restaurant, so I would assume that the staff would find that was in alignment with what I just read, because restaurant is on this list. And then the car wash is ancillary to the gas station, so they would say that. So we'll see what they say. The other is that this building combined of two uses like that, I think that I wonder how they'll evaluate that. Because I think that
I think there are regulations at gas station that only allow a certain amount of mini marts, the convenience store. So they're good on that because they don't count the restaurant.
Ginny?
Is it really a restaurant, or is it an area where people buy at the counter and sit down for convenience and eat?
Yeah, you know.
I can't picture a restaurant in a Royal Farm.
Yeah,
A lot of truck stops do that.
Yeah, they have a
Yeah,
restaurant.
it's a convenience thing. You're not going to have somebody coming over, taking your order, and serving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a bunch of tables where somebody sits.
Well, I mean, yeah,
But
but
it's a
that's kind of
restaurant.
like a lot of the fast food
Chick-fil-A.
places.
I mean, I don't see it as big. Big deal.
Sure.
Jane, has anyone evaluated what the benefit to the county is in terms of tax revenue?
That's not really part of the. It's not really allowed. It's not something that's allowed in evaluation of a zoning case.
Mm-hmm.
So, if
Given the amount of space that's being taken up by these three uses, so would that valuation change if one of those was eliminated? For example, the restaurant part, but the gas station and the car wash.
Yeah. So that was something the applicant, would be obviously having done, but it's not done by the evaluators. The planning staff wouldn't be doing that.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it entered into the.
I'm sorry?
I am sure that it has entered into this, whether it is allowable by law or not. I am sure it has entered into this. I remember we went through a big period where that whole area was hard hit, and there was a question about what do we do with this land that's not bringing in any revenue to the county. I forget how many years ago that was, but where Lincoln Technical is and all of that. So there was a lot of discussion there. I'm sure some of those discussions have been revisited. That's just my statement.
Alan?
Of course, the ancillary question to yours, Sherry, is not value to the county, but campaign contributions to the people who are making these decisions. Withdrawn.
Yeah, please.
Given that there's gray area around the FDP, is there anything in this new case that submarines our testimony in the previous case?
I don't think there's any, obviously the Snowden Parkway is taken care of, but if you're, I don't think so. I'd have to read it, word for word to see.
Thank you.
I'd have to see. I think you're pretty good.
So if they decide to go to court, it would be the county defending right?
They have to make a decision first before they go to court.
Right. If Royal Farms decides to appeal the first submittal.
Oh, you're talking the first.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. In essence, they would have to sue the DPZ, the County Board of Appeals.
I actually don't know. I'd have to look that up just to answer for sure.
I'm not following your question.
It's not the DBC that made the decision. Wouldn't they sue the hearing exam?
The Board of Appeals. The Board of Appeals. So what I'm saying, Sherry, is so they lost at the Board of Appeals.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, the next step, if you wish to pursue that, you have to go to court.
Right. You have
It's a circuit court.
You have to appeal to the circuit court.
Right.
And I believe I'm not sure if that's an appeal or if that's actually a de novo if you start all over again in the circuit court. It may be that actually in the circuit court you once again are starting all over again.
But who are the parties?
Pardon me?
Who would the parties be?
The parties would presumably be the applicant and the DPZ. Yeah, you're challenging an administrative decision.
Okay.
And
right. Thank you.
One other thing that we did do
at the time was evaluate where the gas stations in Columbia were, and we found that this would be the only one in industrial land. So that kind of proves that, we thought that was pretty strong. All the others are, the commercially designated Columbia land or B2 or other, but this would be the first one located in industrial, and we thought that was pretty strong. It was in the end of Snowden's testimony.
Which raises the question I forgot that I was going to ask. My understanding is that whole mess of land was going to be the GE park is coming out of some kind of zoning restriction or zoning whatever. Does this get affected by that, or is
this affected by that? No.
Is this part of that land?
No.
Is it all separate?
No.
This is all still part of.
This not impacted by that. Yeah. That's the gateway. The GE, those big facilities.
Any other questions? Sure.
What would you want then? Is it going to be on the agenda then in the next 2 weeks from now?
I'm not sure. I'm happy for others who, maybe Greg, have already got some language in mind. It feels like now would be a time to make a motion to direct the staff to.
Right. Does the board feel it has enough, information to, again, just to decide on the? I'd always answer again the limited question about whether or not we're going to oppose this, and then direct staff to then go forward and come up with a strategy and arguments to do that. I mean, we don't have to agree on arguments tonight. It's just a matter of whether we're going to oppose.
Right. Well, if we want to direct the staff so that on the May 20, well, I guess if they're not going to go up in June, the time pressure's off a little bit.
Right. So, my understanding, though, from all this, and I'll double check, is we're kind of already on record as opposing the gas station at this site from the testimony we've given and the votes we've had. So unless somebody wants to change that, that's the direction.
I do want to change it because I think Andy, it's with all due respect, you made it murky in some of the emails leading up to tonight's meeting where you said, well, that was only uncertain. The board actually only did this. So I want to just...
there was something else that got discussed at that meeting.
So I just wanted to sort of clear the decks and just make the motion that the board take a position opposing the Royal Farms SDP and direct staff to develop a strategy and arguments to go forward with that opposition.
Good.
I'll second that.
Second.
Milton?
Then if the board's going to be for it, I would recommend also, because I know what we did in 2015, but I've been here for 4 years now. I've seen that same structure there for 4 years, and I'm sure it's been there for longer than that. All they do is have pop-up discount mattress sales. So I think that the board also, I'm not going to say it's an obligation, but I think the board should also think about, what do you say to the public? You're opposing this, but there's no future for that site because we haven't seen the future for that site. So basically we're saying we'd rather have this dilapidated building where they have these pop-up events as opposed to something else.
As opposed to a Royal Farms gas station and mega car wash, yes.
Yeah, because we can have this same structure sitting there for the next X number of years that's becoming more and more an eyesight.
That's up to the owner.
Yes.
Well, the owner's not going to do anything because he's waiting for this Royal Farms thing to be resolved.
Nancy wants to.
In response to what you're saying, I can appreciate nobody wants to look at the ugly building, but the ugly building is not taking business away from the whatever local gas stations there are at this point. It's not going to be causing a huge traffic jam Snowden River's already a nightmare. It's only going to get worse. I hate looking at ugly buildings, and Columbia has its share, but I really oppose the whole idea of the Royal Farms because it's like one big nick or chunk or whatever that it's taking out of what Columbia was supposed to be.
Well, what do you say to the what do you say? Okay, go ahead, Alan.
To me, while I agreed that issue is important, to me they're two separate issues. And I wouldn't want us to burden, since there's not another proposal at this point, I don't want to burden the staff with coming up with a whole other set of talking points. Let's deal with this, and as part of our review of development in total, we can talk about the future. But right now we have a current that we have to do.
Milton, Jenny, and Dick.
Okay, I understand what Alan said, Alan's point, and I can agree with that. But also, is that since I've been here, I've also seen experienced it. It's 50 cents different in gas in some places in this community. And to me, what's the reason for that? Is it a lack of competition or what? Because I can go to Hickory Ridge service station and then go to River Hill and pay 50 cents less. And
I go to Costco.
Yeah, but that's the reason why you go to Costco.
That's right.
Jenny and then Dick. Jenny?
Exactly.
Can I be clear on what we're opposing? Are we opposing the Royal Farm, the gas part? Are we opposing the gas and the car wash?
It's the
Are we
SDP.
opposing
It's
the
a site.
whole project? Or are we saying the mini mart might be okay with the little, I don't think it's a restaurant.
No, the site development plan has the whole.
No, I know the site development plan has a whole thing, but are we saying if they did just a Royal Farm? I just want to know what we're saying. They may ask you this when you testify. Are you opposing the whole thing, or is it okay to have just a... And I don't think Royal Farm will go along with this, by the way, but, mini mart. I'm just asking that
We're directing staff to come up with a strategy.
Okay,
and come back to us with a strategy, which may mean do the whole thing, do parts of it. And then
Okay, I just want to make sure when they ask that question, we're prepared with an answer.
Okay, well, let's make sure that the staff understands that. Because, the motion I read from Greg was just flat-out opposition. But you have a slightly different...
Strategy to develop a strategy and arguments to go forward with the opposition.
Yeah, see, that's how he left it, and I'm just asking, what does that mean? That's all.
Effective opposition possible.
The opposition to what?
The Royal Farms proposed SDP.
Well, then it's everything.
That's everything.
Right.
It's the SDP.
Is it the use, the traffic, the whole...
Dick, let's get Dick in here and then...
Well, first of all, you oppose the entire thing because we're not going to negotiate with ourselves here. If this thing doesn't go through, then Royal Farms has the option to come back and say, well, we'll just put in this. Okay. So we're not going to go there. Our thing is we want to get rid of the whole shebang. Now, Milton raises a good point. There is an ugly building there right now, and they not only sell mattresses from time to time as rugs, but
I don't buy any.
Hang them out in the front yard. It really is disgusting. But the reason that they're doing that is the owner of that building is waiting for the Royal Farms deal to come through so we can sell the building. And in the meantime, what's he going to do with it? Well, he's making it as ugly as possible. And so this is not a choice between the rug merchant and the mattress merchant and Royal Farms. This is against Royal Farms. And then let's see what comes next, because obviously that thing is not financially viable as an empty warehouse.
Okay, Greg, can you restate your motion just so I...
Yes, I move that the board oppose the proposed Royal Farm SDP, Site Development Plan, and direct staff to develop a strategy and arguments to go forward with this opposition.
And I'll second that.
No, it's ready. Sorry.
It's already seconded.
Alan already seconded. Alan?
So your intention in that the staff would come back to us and let us know what the strategy is before implementing it, or just they would go off and do whatever strategy they decide is best?
Staff will
if I may, I respond to yes. I would come back. I'm not going to court. Well, I'm not going there without coming back to the board with the legal strategy.
Yeah, I would kind of insist that they have to come back. That they can't they just can't go.
So then I would say you would want to put this on the agenda on the 24th. You would.
We'll take it off. We'll take it off.
Well, so if we have, how will we communicate the strategy? Say there is something that has to be done in a timely way. Say there's some procedure we have to do. How would we hire a lawyer and he says you got to file a certain paper?
I think we have to keep it on the 24th.
You can always keep it on and.
Yeah, we can always keep it on. Then we'll just drop it if we need to.
Jane, I'm not following you. What is? There's no planning board.
Well, there's still lawyers sometimes advise you to file a whole bunch of stuff so you're a party to a case, and so it may seem funny, but if that has to be done by June 1, I'm saying if we're
Jane
not
can't answer your question because you're treading now into attorney-client privilege territory.
Yes.
So.
Sure.
Yeah, well, there are a whole bunch of things, bunch of questions that people asked about signage, about regulations. All of that stuff is, I think, is stuff that Jane said that she can research. So that can certainly come back to the board on the 24th. And then we said we were going to look at comparison. So, let's get clear on what the real difference is between what that first one was, what the second one was. If that gives us a different view of things, we can only know that when Jane comes back with the evidence to show us what that comparison is. So I'd like to ask that it stay on the 24th.
Good.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Unanimous.
Andy,
yes.
While I'm here, could I just have a couple of minutes to talk about the Snowden River Parkway improvement?
Sure, because it came up.
So that is a capital project that's been on the books since 2008, if you look back in the county. So it's something they intend to do, but it's taking a really long time because they don't own the property, some of it that they need. The idea is to widen Snowden to be 3 lanes in each direction, so adding a lane in each direction, and a pathway, buffered pathway on each side. So some land can be taken from the median, but some land they need, including our land from Oakland Mills coming west. The pathway they're proposing is on our property, so they'd have to come here for an easement. So when they went to the public about a month and something ago, 2 months ago, to share, it wasn't because it's coming soon. Nothing's coming soon on that, but they did talk about these breakout projects, one that you mentioned, that are happening soon. So when we saw, Jessica went to that meeting, our new staffer, and she talked to them on the floor about some things that she had concerns about. And then we invited the Department of Public Works staffers to come meet with us, including Dennis was at the meeting, to talk to us about what their plans were and when the timeline was and some concerns that we had. It's fine to have a pathway there. It was just some taking down trees, some undulation in the pathway just didn't seem necessary. How they were going to buffer the pathway, given that they're taking down these trees, and so forth. So they told us it's years and years and years, and they're still thinking maybe they're going to do it in segments. They're not clear. And then they told us about the breakout projects, and what that means, a breakout means it's something that they can take out of the big project and get done. And that third turn lane, so again, when you're heading westbound to Broken Land Parkway, turning left to go mostly 32, but also on Broken Land South, there are 2 lanes that go left. I think one may also go straight, but now they're going to be 3 turn lanes to the left. And they said they're doing that this summer.
This is where, it's like, where have we been? I brought up in one of my emails what they did on Broken Land most recently to take away a shoulder between Little Tucks.
There was no public notice of that.
And I'm sure it was probably on some plan going way back to 1893 or something. No, it wasn't okay. But this is where it's like, we've never talked about roads, right? We always felt like that's not our lane. But this is the kind of thing where that is changing Snowden along the lines that you're talking about. The counties already had been in the works. Is going to change the character of that entire area into something. Again, where else do we have 3 lanes going in each direction?
Parkway has 3 lanes.
Yeah, but it's obviously its character isn't going to turn into a bunch of retail and everything else on either side. You never know. Nothing. You can never say never. But no, it starts to look a little more like, Route 40. It starts to look a little more like Route 1, right? Where you've got, these awful things. And it's just, to me, I wish there's some way, just with that in mind, is there any way, Jane, that we can influence what is happening in Snowden to at least delay it until maybe we come up with some type of plan? It seems like every time that they talk about that area, it says, well, we still need to figure out what we're going to do with Snowden, right? It happened in the marketing study, the general plan, all these things. Say, well, we still need to figure out what we're doing before we do anything. But now they're doing something before they've,
They think it through the traffic, as at peak hour, I guess, the demands of this be done. And, if you have waited there at the turn, PM peak, it's pretty bad. And the other breakout thing is hard to describe verbally, but when you're coming off of 32 heading west and you come to Broken Land Parkway, right now you can go straight and you get to a light and you turn left to go south. Or you peel off really fast to the right and that lane gets you to go priority to Snowden Parkway. But then there's the bobbing and weaving. Some people don't want to go there, they want to go straight. So this will have a new kind of intersection where if you want to go on Snowden River Parkway, you will have to go straight and make a right-hand turn, essentially. So you won't go there won't be that unimpeded slip. And I have a drawing of it, and I wish I had it with me. But it's not happening this summer, but it's happening sooner. And that is, again, to help it's that dangerous bobbing and weaving.
Milton. And Jane, you may help me with this, but I think, Greg, there is a plan by the Department of Planning and Zoning to do a study of the Snowden River corridor between Broken Land Parkway and 175, and I think that's coming up with. Were there dollars for the FY19 fiscal year?
I have to check because I'm not sure it's calendar year 19 that they're doing it or fiscal year 19.
And see, so these are questions. I'm sorry.
Alan, and then Nancy and Sherry.
Going back to the 3 turn lanes, are they just restriping? Or are they adding a lane? And are they planning on doing away with the pre-turn to the right onto?
I can't answer that. I don't know off the top of my head how they're accommodating it, but there still will be all the other things there, so they must have space from either the median or
I think it's on the median. They are widening it. They are widening. Nancy?
Excuse me, but I'm going to back up to Royal Farms again. I just had this thought, and I wanted to share it with you, and you can tell me if I'm full of baloney. There's a gas station around right across the way.
Yeah.
And my concern is, and I'm typing up my notes here, that this is going to become a blighted station, potentially. No?
The old one?
The other station.
The Exxon.
The Exxon.
Why?
Because it'll be in competition with much lower prices, which is what Royal Farms does. They're doing it next to Costco. Nobody can figure out how they can bring in such low prices for gasoline when everywhere else it's climbing like crazy. So my concern is that, okay, maybe not this year, but another year or two. Is that an argument to use against?
No, the economic argument is not
that you can't use it.
Planning. It's not considered.
But
how silly of me.
Some of those filling stations.
I had a question also about it. This is the larger planning question. So we have transportation has been kicked around so many different ways, so nobody is talking about mass transit or anything along those lines. They're all private cars that are all sitting there.
They're talking about bus rapid transit and other things.
But I don't think that is coming into this conversation about 3 lanes, because those 3 lanes are really about individual cars that are going off there. The other thing is, and this is what I find so frustrating, what happened to walkability? I have seen people standing there, terrified, to cross that area. They want to get over to Lake Elkhorn. There's no way to do it without taking your life into your hands. So is there going to be something that is going to be built into this plan so that we have bikeability and walkability, or is that only going to be for downtown? I think, this is where parts seem to be working against other parts, and we don't seem to be having this master planning. So that's another thing I hope that we can address, that we'd like to focus on that as well. It's not just ever about cars. It's about all the other multi-modes that people are using in that area. It's high density. That has to be figured in some way. So I'd like to see that somehow mentioned in this next piece, if possible.
Andy, there was one other item on the plan that you will hear people vote their opposition to. This plan calls for closing a certain median that residents have access out of their community, and adding a signal at the Lincoln Tech. There's no signal there, and they would be adding it. And Andy, the name of the street is
Rustling Leaf.
Rustling. So everyone from Rustling Lane came out at this meeting and subsequently and said they're against it because they like getting access there, which is they can go right, but they can go left too, going towards Snowden Square and so forth. It's very difficult sometimes, and that's why it's being closed, because it's really not safe.
It's terrifying, yeah.
And the neighborhood has some other access that's, you have to go around a little bit to another traffic light. So, and they can't have 2 lights there and at Lincoln Tech because they're too close to each other. So I just wanted to let you know we're aware of that. That neighborhood has that issue. I don't think the general public has that issue. It's not necessarily something I think that probably the CA board, you can take it up, but it is an issue.
Does that impact egress and into Supreme?
No. That's where their neighborhood should be coming out and using that if they want to go south.
So since we're talking this, I'll give you a little more detail because my village has been very involved in this process. I can tell you that we have pushed for many, many years for the widening of Snowden River Parkway. We have worked hard at the county council and with the county exec. And I can tell you right now, our board is thrilled that they're going to widen Snowden River Parkway because it is such a mess.
It's a mess.
It is just a horrible, horrible mess. Mm-hmm. Now, in addition to widening, what they have also said is they will put in pathways. So, yes, definitely on both sides of the road. And they're going to put in crosswalks at the intersections. So, yes, our board was very concerned and still is concerned with making sure that it isn't just because we're looking at this as like a boulevard. I mean, with walkability, and the businesses that are coming in there are also interested in having pathways and access points and things like that. So, Owen Brown's been following this for a long time. We've been working very hard. We've been pushing the county. We are still working with the county on Rustling Leaf. We're not happy with the proposed solution, and we have DPW coming to one of our meetings to lobby for a slightly different solution. But I just want to kind of let you know, it's not like, Snowden River is we consider that part of our village, and we follow this very closely, and we're up to date on all these plans. Our village wants Snowden River Parkway widened. I'll tell you that right now. Okay, anybody else want?
I would just like to say, I see why your village wants it, but the reality is widening the road will not improve the traffic. because the traffic flow through there is terrible, and people don't drive properly on Snowden River as it is. So widening it isn't really going to help. I do like the idea of the paths, but I mean, I think you're kidding yourself if you think that's actually going to help the situation on Snowden without a comprehensive plan in place.
Okay, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, to echo that point, I mean, so many studies have shown adding lanes really.
Traffic.
You had traffic, typically it results in no, once things equal out, more traffic goes there and you end up with the same problems you had in the beginning. Again, it goes to me to we haven't, as a board, said what we think the character of that part of town ought to be, right? And then have Jane and others say, okay, now that we know this is how the board, what this, we talked about this, the strategic goal we never achieved about developing a, shared community vision, things like that for Columbia. Once we have that, staff can go and evaluate these things from that perspective. I mean, what Oakland Mills, what Owen Brown may think is great, we may ultimately agree with that, but then again, we're talking out both sides of our mouth, right? We always talk about bikeability, walkability, reducing traffic and things like that. Oh, but let's add lanes, and I don't know, I just think I wish we had come up with a vision for this area before the county started, and maybe we still can, come up with some kind of vision before the county starts making investments, or else it's going to be too late. I mean, if there's any chance of changing things, it's before they start these pocket projects or whatever they're called.
Lynn and Jenny?
Yeah, we're not a zoning board. That is a huge project, and it involves much more than just Snowden River Parkway or that section. It's something that requires massive amount of information and probably a much more consistent board than what we have. I mean, we're 10 people now. We happen to be the same 10 people for 2, 3, or 4 years together, but that will change and the visions can change too. I think, I don't know where we get ourselves following this path. I think we have to respect that we are part of the county and part of the county zoning process. We can certainly weigh in and advocate for certain things that we think are really important, but just an overall plan for a village right now or for an area right now, I think it's really way beyond our capabilities and certainly our mission as board of directors.
Okay, Jane, give the last word, and then we're going to move on to the next
I
item.
would just like, when Jane has a chance, more specifics on what she was talking about before, so that we know how much money the county's putting in, exactly what the county's plan is for, Lynn, what you're talking about, for planning for that Snowden area, and what the timelines are, description of the project, etc. Because I think that's what, if they're planning on doing that, then I guess the next question is, how do we get involved in that? But to do it on our own, we just don't have the staff, we don't have the money, we don't have the consultants, we blah, blah, blah.
The expertise.
But we certainly could be working.
I think that's what I'm asking for. I'm
oh,
not.
okay.
Okay.
Well, then I don't know how.
You made that up. I mean, I'm just saying, what is our...
Right.
Well, no.
How do we come up with a vision if we don't do that?
So that we can apply it when you
I mean,
then I certainly misunderstood.
All right. The last thing here was the discussion on handling closed meeting minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you're looking at the person who ends up writing these closed minutes. And yeah, we try to get them out as soon as possible. Sometimes we succeed and sometimes we don't. Alan.
Frankly, as we say, all due respect, my experience 4 years on the board is we get these minutes in a lump at the end of the year, and not as we go along. and then we end up in a situation where we're in a closed meeting, which is usually after a regular meeting.
Right.
We got X number of minutes to look at, and we end up not really giving it the attention that it deserves. Whether the solution is what Chow has talked about, of having us make some kind of go, no-go decision at the end of the meeting, having just experienced it, did this feel like it was a meeting that had to stay closed, or could we open it? That may be a solution. It may be that we set a time frame that within 30 days the minutes come to us and we make a decision on approval and release or no release. I don't know. Whether or not we want to have enough consensus to do this at 10 o'clock tonight, or just want to add it to the, make sure. So as I said before, I'd be happy if we had a commitment that this will be a topic in our planning meeting that we have said we're going to have.
I'd like that too.
This definitely goes much for the planning meeting.
We could do something simple, though, is set an expectation that the minutes will be prepared within a certain period of time and will be presented at the next closed meeting, right?
No, the expectation is that you will see them in one of the open meetings. We don't need a closed meeting just to view the minutes. Because remember how we've been approving
We see them in the meeting,
minutes?
we see them online in
Yeah,
a closed area.
right. And then what we do is we put them on the consent agenda for approval, and then if somebody doesn't want it, what I want to avoid is having a closed meeting whose purpose is to approve the minutes of a previous closed meeting, because then
we'd
I'm
have to
getting
approve those minutes.
right, because then I'm getting in an infinite loop, and I'm trying to do the consent agenda. You see,
I meant at the next regularly scheduled closed meeting.
Okay.
Have them regularly scheduled.
Well, we have them regularly.
The next schedule.
Could we really talk about this? I mean, this is
Yeah, let's, when we meet.
when we meet. I mean, it's one of the things that's been ongoing, and I know Janet.
Throw one thing out there, and I think I'm not sure exactly what Chow has in mind, but what I heard is at the end of each meeting we could take a quick pulse and say, do we think this? I mean, I realize Sherry has to review them and all of those things, but at the end of each meeting, like, does this seem like something that we're going to have to keep the minutes closed, or is it something that we can release? And then that also might impact how detailed the minutes should or shouldn't be.
A straw vote. I like that.
Yeah.
I think I agree with Janet said. That's exactly my intention. I think the problem is right now, we just have too many closed meetings at the end of a certain time, and I just totally forget what we talked about. It's a long time ago, right?
Absolutely.
And there's nothing, the agenda is just 3 lines of agenda, right? Nothing very specific. We just need to have a very standard way to handle that. Either like 30 days or something, or at the end of the meeting we do something.
No, I agree.
We could do
They
both.
did-
The straw
it did
vote
work out
idea
very
with the
well this year.
30-day deadline.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll have that. I'd like to adjourn the meeting.